Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. It was one of those nights that lodges itself deep in your bones. No matter how much you drink or sleep or talk it down later, it just stays. My name's Ethan Cole. I'm 33, live about 20 miles outside Hollow Creek, a quiet dot on the map in northern Georgia. Work-wise, I'm a freelance graphic designer, mostly contract gigs in the city. That means I spend long hours in front of screens and often end up crashing at my buddy Caleb's office downtown to meet deadlines. Most nights, by the time I finally lock up, it's well past midnight. The drive home is straightforward, just a lonely stretch of Route 47, two narrow lanes hugging either side of a dark wall of trees. Barely any cars at that hour. No streetlights except the rare flicker from overhead lamps struggling to stay alive. Only one place breaks up the monotony. Carter's Fuel and Mart. Sits right where Route 47 kisses Old Mill Creek Road. Been there forever. It's kind of an unspoken checkpoint for anyone who travels that route at night. I've probably stopped there 100 times, usually for a cold soda or those Cajun-spiced peanuts they keep in that little metal basket by the register. It's stupid, but there's comfort in routine. That Saturday felt off. I couldn't explain why. It had rained earlier, so the road shimmered wet in my headlights, reflecting everything like broken glass. A light mist hovered low along the shoulder, and the air had that heavy, earthy scent. Wet leaves, asphalt, something vaguely metallic. The dashboard clock blinked 11:56 p.m. As Carter's came into view, I saw a single car parked off to the side. An old, beat-up Chevy Impala, dark blue. One taillight busted, the plastic hanging loose like broken skin. Not the strangest thing in the world. You get weird cars out there. Drifters, truckers, locals making last-minute beer runs. I didn't think much of it at first. The station looked normal enough. Flickering neon sign buzzing like a lazy wasp. Pale yellow light above the door painting a soft pool on the pavement. But the moment I pulled in and cut the engine, I felt it. This tension. Like my body knew something my mind hadn't caught up to yet. My stomach knotted for no reason. I just sat there for a second watching the storefront. No one behind the counter, no movement inside. Weird. Paul usually worked nights, mid-40s, heavy-set guy, always humming some old Merle Haggard song. Quiet but dependable. The kind of guy who didn't leave the register unless he had to. Still, maybe he was in the back room or the restroom. I stepped out of the car. Cold air slapped my face, sharp and damp, smelled like moss and oil. My boots crunched over the gravel. The bell above the door gave a tired jingle as I walked in. Ding, ding. Empty. Not just no people. Empty. Racks of chips and candy bars stood at awkward angles. Refrigerators buzzed softly in the back, the light inside one flickering like a dying firefly. But no Paul. No anyone. The Impala was still out there, its silhouette hazy through the window. I hovered near the door for a second, listening. Nothing. "Paul," I called out, "you around, man?" No answer. My skin prickled. I told myself not to be an idiot. Maybe he stepped out back for a smoke. I grabbed a pack of those Cajun peanuts and tried to shake the nerves off. Stood there in the middle of the aisle, listening again. The silence was wrong. Not peaceful. Dead. Like the place was trying too hard to pretend everything was normal. "Hello?" I called louder this time. My voice echoed weirdly. Still nothing. I scanned the place again, slower this time. That's when I noticed it, near the back. Faint marks on the floor. Scuff lines like something heavy had been dragged. Not a lot, just enough to raise every hair on my neck. I set the peanuts on the counter, walked slowly toward the restroom. The door was shut. I hesitated, then knocked. "Paul?" My voice came out smaller than I meant. Silence. I tried the handle. Locked. I stepped back, looked around again. Every instinct screamed that something wasn't right. The humming fridge, The stale smell of cleaning supplies and dust, the weird stillness. All of it felt like a trap. That was it. I was done. I turned and pushed out the door fast, almost stumbling into the parking lot. The Impala hadn't moved. Its windows were fogged from the cold. I moved toward it, cautious, glanced inside. Empty. No driver, no bags. Just the faint smell of mildew and something sharp, maybe bleach. I circled around the back of the building. Nothing but a narrow alley choked with wet leaves and trash. Completely deserted. I felt a shiver run through me, deep and cold. I pulled out my phone with fingers that didn't feel entirely steady and punched in 911. A calm voice answered after 2 rings. 911, what's your emergency? Yeah, I'm at Carter's gas station off Route 47. I said into the phone, trying to keep my voice steady. The clerk's missing. The store's empty. Something's not right. Stay where you are, sir, the dispatcher said. We're dispatching a unit now. She told me the nearest patrol was coming in from Mill Creek. Said it might take 15, maybe 20 minutes. I climbed back into my car, locked the doors, and started the engine. Heater running, headlights off. I stared straight ahead through the windshield, but all I could think about was that locked restroom door. I could still see it through the store window, just sitting there at the end of the aisle. Silent. Unmoving. My grip on the steering wheel was tight enough to hurt. Every flicker from the overhead lights outside made me jump. Shadows shifted in my peripheral vision. Just tree branches and reflections, I kept telling myself. But something deep in my gut knew better. 10 minutes crawled by. Then it happened. The restroom door creaked open. I froze. Every muscle in my body tensed. A man stepped out, tall, lean, maybe mid-30s. He wore a dark hoodie pulled low over his face, jeans, sneakers. His posture was too relaxed. He didn't look around like someone who'd just done something terrible. He walked like he was stepping out of a grocery store. Just another night. No rush. He didn't see me. I sat motionless in the car as he stepped through the station's door and out into the lot. He paused, glanced around like he was checking the weather, then walked off, just like that, toward the woods behind the building. And then he was gone, swallowed up by the tree line. I didn't breathe, didn't move. My heart was a drum inside my chest. About 5 minutes later, red and blue lights filled the lot. Tires crunched over gravel. I jumped out of the car, waving both arms like a man drowning. The officers spilled out, asking questions before I could even finish sentences. I told them everything. About Paul, the scuff marks, the man in the hoodie, the car, the door. They moved fast. They searched the building, guns drawn. They found Paul, beaten to death in the men's restroom. Not robbed, not shot, just savaged. They taped off the scene, yellow cordon like a scar across the lot. I sat on the curb, arms wrapped around myself, shaking, waiting for someone to tell me this was a bad dream. Detective Reed arrived maybe 20 minutes after that. Mid-50s, thinning hair, deep lines under tired eyes, wedding band worn down to a pale groove. "You're lucky you got out of there," he muttered, scribbling notes without looking at me. "We don't get many homicides out here." He didn't say much else, but his expression told me everything. This wasn't a robbery. This was something worse. Random. Unpredictable. The kind of thing that doesn't make sense. Before I left, I asked one of the officers, "Did the security cameras catch anything?" He shook his head. "System's been down a week. Owner never got around to fixing it." I felt that cold, hollow knot twisting again in my chest. I drove home slow, real slow. Every pair of headlights made my stomach clench. I kept checking my mirrors, half expecting that hooded figure to appear in the back seat. But the road behind me stayed empty, until I got home. That's when it hit me like a hammer. My front door was open, not wide, just cracked, barely an inch. But I always lock it, always. Tyson, my German shepherd, was sitting on the porch, alert, ears up, not barking, just staring at the door like he was waiting. Something felt Wrong. Like the air itself had shifted. I killed the lights, popped the trunk, grabbed the tire iron I kept under the mat. My breath came shallow. My fingers tingled. The living room light was on. From where I stood, nothing looked out of place. No shattered windows. No overturned furniture. Just that single, quiet light. The kitchen beyond was dark. I stepped inside, slow and deliberate, pressing my back to the wall. "Hello?" I called out. No answer. I moved room to room, living room, hallway, bedroom, closet, nothing missing, nothing disturbed. Then I saw it, a single muddy footprint just inside the kitchen doorway, barely visible under the overhead light, but big, too big to be mine. I grabbed Tyson by the collar and backed out of the house. Didn't close the door, didn't even think to. I drove straight back to Carter's. Detective Reed was still there. I told him everything. They sent another unit to my house. I followed behind. They confirmed it. Forced entry at the back latch. Muddy prints in the backyard. And the footprint in my kitchen matched the ones they'd found at the gas station. Same size, same tread. No prints, no DNA, no weapon, no face. Reed didn't sugarcoat it. "You probably interrupted him," he said, grave as a funeral. "He followed you home. Maybe waited. Your dog might have scared him off." That was it. They never caught him. For weeks after, patrol cars drove loops around our area. They questioned nearby residents, combed through forest trails, cataloged every vagrant and drifter they could find. 2 days later, they found the Impala, deep in the woods, abandoned, stripped, burned. No body, no blood, just ash. A month passed, then another. I tried to live like things were normal, bought new locks, installed security cameras. I kept Tyson close, never let him out of my sight. I haven't stepped into a gas station after dark since. But some nights, especially when the mist is low and the trees whisper like they're trying to speak, I feel it again. That cold grip around my gut. The weight of eyes on me. I found him 4 years back in a gas station parking lot in New Mexico, just dumped there like trash. He didn't cry, didn't bolt, just sat and stared. I picked him up and he never left. I named him Milo the next day and trained him to walk on a leash not long after. He rides shotgun everywhere now. Doesn't mind the noise or the people, barely flinches in a crowd. But if the engine's off too long, he gets antsy, like me. I grew up in Flagstaff, Arizona. Thought I'd outgrow it, leave it behind in the rear view for good. And I did, for a while. But no matter how far I drive, the desert has a way of clinging to your skin, your bones. A year ago, I gave up my last permanent address, sold the furniture, canceled the lease, traded familiarity for freedom. Since then, my days have bled into one another, drives that last until the sun is nothing but a smear behind the clouds, and strangers I barely remember shaking my hand or buying me coffee in some diner off Route 12. People come and go. Only Milo stays. That night, I was on the way to Ashford, Wisconsin. Some preservation group hired me to photograph a dying factory before they tore it down. I was behind schedule. The snow had started falling hard somewhere north of Peoria, thick flakes that erased the road, the sky, the trees. My hands ached from gripping the wheel, and my legs were stiff from hours without a break. I just needed a place to stop for 5 minutes, stretch, use the restroom, breathe. That's when I saw it. Neon blinking weakly through the storm. Ridgeway Fuel, Deli, open 24 hours. The letters buzzed in the snow like a dying firefly, but it felt like hope. I don't know if it was the loneliness or the cold or maybe just desperation. but I pulled in. The lot was almost empty, just me and a battered silver sedan half covered in slush. I parked a little distance from it and turned off the ignition. Milo let out a low, throaty meow from his carrier, annoyed with the stop. I cracked the door open and immediately felt the cold slap my face, sharp and dry like broken glass. I clipped his leash to his harness and he hopped out grudgingly, curling against my leg as if trying to steal warmth. The place looked like it had been built in the 70s and left to rot. Faded signs in the windows, a busted ice machine outside, and a rusted payphone no one had used in decades. The flickering bulbs over the entrance cast a sickly yellow glow that didn't quite reach the corners. The bell above the door gave a weak clunk as I stepped inside. It was warmer, but not by much. The air had that dry, recycled feel, like a basement that hadn't been aired out in years. Behind the counter stood a man, maybe late 40s, wrapped in a threadbare plaid jacket. His beard was gray and unkempt, and his eyes didn't move from the phone in his hand. He barely acknowledged me. "Hey," I said, my voice hoarse from not using it. "Mind if I use your restroom?" He gave a lazy nod without looking up and gestured vaguely toward the back, left of the freezer cases. I started walking that way, Milo trailing beside me, his little paws making no sound on the stained linoleum. As we passed the beer fridge, I noticed two guys standing nearby. Both wore dark jackets, hoods pulled low, their shoulders hunched. They were whispering low, fast. One looked up briefly and caught my eye, just for a second. Then he turned away. Maybe they were just cold, maybe they were just drunk. But the way their conversation stopped when I passed set something off inside me. Not panic exactly, just tension. The kind that grabs you by the spine and says, "Pay attention." The hallway to the restroom was narrow and dim, the kind of space that makes you walk a little faster without realizing it. The door creaked when I pushed it open. Inside, the bathroom was exactly what you'd expect. Tiny, yellowed, falling apart. One flickering light bulb buzzed overhead. The walls were streaked with moisture and age. It smelled like bleach, mildew, and something else. Something faintly wrong. Rotten, maybe. I set Milo on the sink. He gave me a look, twitching his tail like he wanted to be anywhere else. I did my business quickly, the chill of the place crawling up my back. I kept trying to shake off the feeling, that quiet, uneasy pull in my gut that said something wasn't right. Then I heard it. A sound, rattling, soft, metallic. Wind, I told myself. Maybe. But then the doorknob twitched. Once. Paused. Twice. Harder this time. And I stopped breathing. I froze, every muscle locked tight as if my body had forgotten how to move. My breath hitched painfully in my throat. "Occupied," I called out, louder than I meant to. The word echoed in the cramped bathroom, bouncing off the stained tile and cracked mirror. Milo's ears flattened. He let out a low growl that vibrated against my chest, a deep, unsettled sound I'd only heard once before, when a coyote had gotten too close to our camp in Utah. He clung to me now, claws gripping into my jacket, sharp enough to sting through the fabric. The doorknob rattled again, harder, not just jiggled, but yanked. Then came the voices, low, muffled through the door, but close. "Cuandala logramos." See? My blood went cold. The voice was deep, calm, too calm. The words were Spanish, not quite the dialect my grandmother spoke back in Arizona, but close enough that I understood. Not just the language, the intent. "Cuandela los, when he comes out, we grab him, right?" Another voice, softer, but more urgent. "Not here, idiot. The cashier's there. We wait outside. I think his car is the gray one." Gray? My car was black under normal conditions. But under heavy snow, under that much white glare, it could easily look gray. My stomach dropped. My fingertips went cold. It wasn't paranoia. They were talking about me. Milo let out a hiss, his body coiled against mine like a spring ready to snap. I pressed my back to the cold tile wall and strained to hear more, but their voices were already fading, replaced by retreating footsteps, then silence. Crushing, heavy silence. I didn't move. Not right away. My breath fogged the air in shallow clouds, heart hammering so hard I thought it might shake the walls. I counted to 30, then 60. Milo stayed rigid in my arms. We both jumped when a soft knock came at the door. "Hey, man," said a low voice. "Come out now." I stiffened. That wasn't one of the guys. It was the cashier. I recognized the rough, almost lazy drawl. "My sister's gonna walk you out the back. Those guys, they're outside, by the pumps." I hesitated. It could still be a trap. Setups don't always come with flashing signs. But staying put didn't feel like safety anymore. It felt like waiting to be hunted. Slowly, I reached for the door and cracked it open. A narrow eye slit. Just enough to see. The woman from earlier stood there. I'd seen her whispering with the cashier when I first walked in. Now her eyes were wide, serious, with a look I couldn't mistake. Urgency, but not panic. She was scared too. That mattered. "Now," she whispered. "Back hallway. Go. They're waiting." She didn't have to say who they were. I could hear them. The crunch of snow. That thought haunts me more than anything else. I was raised to be cautious, but also raised to smile, nod, and not make a scene. Growing up as a girl in a small, half-forgotten town like Mercer Falls, South Carolina, you learn early that keeping your guard up isn't being dramatic. It's just common sense. You learn which roads are still pitch black after sunset, which gas stations always have that one sketchy guy by the dumpster, and how many miles you've got left once the gas light starts blinking. You know your margins. It was early spring, that weird in-between. Watched. Not smiling. Not scowling. Just there. Present in the most unsettling way. I kept fiddling with the pump, pretending I didn't notice him. I told myself he was just a guy on a smoke break. Nothing more. No big deal. Still, I could feel my fingers getting clumsy on the nozzle. I was very aware of how alone I was. The way he kept watching, it wasn't casual. It wasn't curiosity, it was deliberate, like he was storing away details. Memorizing. He let out a low chuckle, not loud, almost like he was laughing at something only he found funny. Maybe at me. My pulse picked up. I forced myself not to glance at him again, not to show any sign I was unnerved. But every second that passed made it harder to ignore the crawling unease under my skin. He didn't move. Didn't say a word. Just smoked. Just stared. Like he had nowhere else to be. Like I was the only thing he wanted to look at. I gave up on the pump, heart thudding now, and slipped back into the car, locking the doors before I even shifted into drive. My fingers were tight around the steering wheel. I pulled forward to the next pump, the one closer to the exit, hoping maybe distance would give me some ease. I tried again, and this time the pump responded instantly. Gas started flowing with a steady click. Relief, brief and thin, washed over me. But it didn't last. I saw him again. He wasn't by the wall anymore. He was moving. No, strolling toward my car. Same slow, casual pace. Still smoking. That same unreadable expression etched on his face like it had been carved there, like he wore it on purpose. Something deep in me snapped awake. I didn't wait. I rolled down the passenger window just a couple of inches. Not enough for a hand, just enough to speak through. He paused mid-step, as if reassessing, then shifted direction and made his way to the passenger side, his boots scuffing lightly on the pavement. He leaned in, placing both hands casually on the edge of the window frame, head tilted, eyes scanning my face. "Hey," he said, voice smooth. Too smooth. Too casual. It felt practiced. "I know this is gonna sound really weird, but I swear I'm not some creep or anything." He smiled, not warmly. It was the kind of smile someone gives after a bluff, testing the water, waiting to see if you'll fold. He nodded. Over here thinking this was a long shot, but yeah, I'm just completely stranded. I shook my head. "I'm really sorry, I can't." He sighed, played at lightness. "If you had a truck or something, I'd ride in the back," he said with a weak chuckle. "I'm not picky." I didn't laugh, didn't even fake a smile. No. And in that instant, just a second or two, his expression stilled. Not angry, just still. Calculating. His eyes narrowed ever so slightly, like he was measuring something, weighing options. Then, like a switch flipped, his whole face changed. Without warning, he yanked the door handle. When it didn't open, he thrust his arm through the narrow window gap, reaching for the inside latch. His whole forearm was suddenly in my car, inches from me. But my engine was still running. I slammed the stick into first and floored it. The tires squealed on the concrete as the car surged forward. His arm shot back just in time, the momentum of the car slamming the door shut behind it. I didn't look back. Didn't care if the nozzle had still been in the tank. Didn't care if I was dragging it halfway down the road. I didn't even register the burst of adrenaline. It just carried me. I hit the main road in less than 10 seconds, phone already in hand. I never thought I'd feel so stupidly grateful for a single bar of fuel. The trip was meant to be a detox. No phone calls, no meetings, no responsibilities. Just me and Rachel, a week off the grid in the Pacific Northwest. I needed it after the chaos of my job in downtown Detroit and the slow implosion of my last relationship. Rachel had just been blindsided by a brutal layoff. And one night over cheap wine and frozen pizza, she pitched the idea. Fly into Eugene, rent a car, and just drive. No plans, no clocks, just coastlines, trees, fog, and freedom. We landed on a gray, drizzly Sunday, picked up a beat-up red Subaru Outback from a guy who looked like he ran a vape shop out of his garage. "She's old," he said, patting the hood, "but loyal." We named her Lucy before we even left the lot. That night, we sat parked in some empty lot under a buzzing street lamp, eating powdered donuts from a gas station and scrolling aimlessly through Rachel's saved travel pins. Clearwater Bluff caught our eye, a weird little town not even Google Maps seemed to know well. There was a trailhead Rachel wanted to hike, and some obscure art gallery her favorite blogger had raved about. So we pointed Lucy north and hit the road. The first few days were perfect. Winding roads, rain-slick evergreens, overpriced coffee in paper cups that smelled like cardamom, and one fog-drenched hike where our hair never fully dried. We even found a tiny farmer's market in a gravel lot where someone tried to sell us elk jerky. The whole thing felt like a hipster daydream. The day it happened, we'd driven all the way to the coast near a town called Port Rayan. Rachel had read about this old lighthouse there, haunting and historic, she said, dragging the vowels out dramatically. She wasn't wrong. It was beautiful and lonely, and so bitterly cold it made our teeth ache. By the time we left, the sky was bleeding out its last light, and we were half listening to a podcast about ghost towns and haunted diners, half laughing at the absurd stories. We were somewhere between Port Rayan and the interstate when I noticed it, the gaslight burning orange like a warning flare. "Shit," I muttered, tapping the screen like that would change anything. "Didn't we fill up in Shelton?" "We did," Rachel said, leaning over the console to look. "But that was hours ago. Like 4, maybe more?" I squinted into the dark. No lights, no road signs, just endless trees, stretching out in both directions like we were driving into the throat of something ancient. "I'll look up the nearest station," she offered, digging her phone out of her coat pocket. "No service," I said before she could check. I already knew. Mine had dropped all bars at least 30 minutes back, in her voice that made my stomach tighten. He turned slightly, his eyes flicking to her then back to me. "A lot of people get lost out here." The way he said it made my skin prickle. Not a warning, a statement of fact, maybe even a memory. "You girls headed north or south?" he asked, still watching me like he was trying to read something off my face. I hesitated. Something about him made me want to lie. "South," I said finally. He smiled. 15 minutes later, we pulled into a newer-looking chevron at the edge of a small town called Drywood Falls. It was like blinking awake. Bright LED lights, clean signage, real pavement. One other car sat at a far pump, and a kid who couldn't have been older than 19 came strolling up. "Need a fill-up?" he asked. "We're good," I said. "Just topped off a few miles back." He raised an eyebrow. "Where?" "Some old station, out past the trees. No sign, really." He frowned, visibly confused. "You mean Hollow Pine?" "Maybe. Wasn't labeled." He let out a slow whistle and stepped back slightly. "That place? Nobody's used that in like 10 years. I blinked. "We just did." He shook his head. "No, you didn't. That place was drained and boarded up years ago. No power, no fuel. My cousin tried to squat there once, got chased out by cops and raccoons." "I filled up," I insisted. "Watched the needle move." He looked shaken. "That's not possible." Rachel leaned out the window. "You ever hear of a guy named Bill? Said he was a mechanic nearby." The kid paled. "Bill Henley?" She glanced at me. I nodded slowly. "He gave us a card." The kid took a cautious step back. "You shouldn't have talked to him." "Why?" He looked around like someone might be listening, then leaned in. "Bill Henley disappeared 8 years ago. Search parties, posters, everything. Just vanished. People say he still shows up out there sometimes. On the road, near Hollow Pine. Gives travelers cards." Rachel's face had gone ashen. "We heard that part already," she said quietly. "But what happens next?" The kid swallowed. "There are stories. People meet him, and sometimes they disappear too. Not always right away, but eventually." I pulled the card from my coat pocket. The name was still there, but the phone number? All zeros. Back at the motel, Rachel couldn't sleep. She kept checking the windows, jumping at every car door in the lot. I tried to shrug it off, to tell myself we were just tired, just freaked out. But then curiosity got the better of me. I slipped outside, climbed into Lucy, and turned the key. The gas gauge. Full. Then I checked my banking app. No charge. No transaction. No trace of the fill-up. Inside, the card still sat on the nightstand, face down. Neither of us touched it again. By morning, we were done. No more detours. We left Drywood Falls without breakfast and drove straight back to Eugene in silence. The forest outside the windows felt different, colder, less like trees and more like a warning. The weirdest part? At the airport, just before boarding, Rachel froze in front of a book display. "Look." Give strangers who you hope aren't dangerous. Then I looked away. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. He started walking, not toward his pump, toward me. Slow and steady, like he was already sure of how the next 5 minutes were going to go. "You girls heading somewhere?" he asked. His voice was deep and cracked, like gravel dragged across pavement, and there was a kind of weight in it. Calculated friendliness. I kept my hand wrapped around the pump handle. "Just heading home," I said, keeping my tone light. He nodded once, deliberate, eyes flicking to the nozzle, then back to my face. "Need a hand with that?" he asked, a smile that didn't reach his eyes curling his lips. "Pretty girls like you shouldn't have to be doing that alone." I forced a smile. Tight. Measured. "Thanks, but I've got it." Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Marissa's window now halfway down. She was watching. Alert. Neither of us laughed this time. I saw Marissa's fingers tighten around her keychain, her knuckles pale. The pepper spray was clutched like a lifeline. Her eyes, wide and unblinking, watched every move he made. But he didn't back off. If anything, he stepped closer, just enough that I could feel the weight of him in the air. "Bet you'd look sweeter with a smile," he said, and without warning, reached toward the gas nozzle in my hand. My body moved before my brain could catch up. I stepped in fast, wedging myself between him and the car door, using it as a shield. I gripped the handle tighter, heartbeat loud in my ears. "Sir," I said, trying to sound firm, "I've got it, please step back." He didn't move at first, just stood there, smiling. But the warmth in his expression slipped away. His eyes changed, still calm but colder, focused, like he was assessing something, measuring me. Not anger, not surprise, just calculation, the kind that makes your skin crawl. "You sure ain't no trouble," he muttered, but his voice had a new weight to it now. Then he reached again, slow and casual, and this time his fingers grazed mine. I yanked my hand back like I'd touched a hot stove. "Back. Off." My voice dropped low and sharp, the kind of voice you hope sounds braver than you feel. That was when Marissa moved. Her door swung halfway open with a creak. That tiny action, just a door, a shadow of a second, snapped something in him. He flinched, just barely, and his eyes flicked over to her, then back to me. A beat of silence passed between us. "Two," he muttered, more to himself than to us. Then that smile returned, smug and slow, curling at the edge of his lips like he knew he'd gotten under our skin. "All right then," he said, backing off, both hands raised in mock surrender. "No need to be rude." He turned and walked away, but not like a man retreating. No. He moved like he was still in control, like this was all some private joke we hadn't been let in on yet. Every step was calculated, slow, letting us know he wasn't afraid. Neither of us spoke. I didn't bother finishing the fill. I jammed the nozzle back into the cradle with shaking fingers, barely registering the final clink of the latch, and jumped into the driver's seat. "Lock it," I said, louder than I meant to, fumbling for the ignition. Marissa hit the lock button immediately, the click of the doors sealing us in more reassuring than it should have been. "Was he actually—" she began, but I cut her off. "He wasn't getting gas," I said, breath ragged. "He never even touched his pump, just drove up, got out, and walked over." I checked the rearview mirror. Sure enough, he was just standing there, still, watching us go. No nozzle in his hand, no movement at all. "Do not look back," I said. My voice cracked on the last word. Neither of us said another word for the next 20 minutes. We just drove, fast, quiet, the silence stretching longer and tighter with each mile. Once we hit signal range, I veered off into a brightly lit Dollar General parking lot and killed the engine. The sudden stillness made me realize how fast I'd been breathing. Marissa finally spoke, voice low, like she was afraid to say it out loud. "You really think he was going to try something?" "I don't think he was there to pump gas." I replied. We sat there in silence, both staring straight ahead like the answers were hidden in the dashboard. The low fuel light came on again. I didn't care. I wasn't stopping again, not until we hit the city limits. Later, we told a few friends about it. Most of them nothing urgent. 2 welfare checks. 1 neighbor spat that fizzled out before the officers even arrived. I clocked out around 12:30 a.m., usual time. But I hung around a bit to finish paperwork, mostly reports I didn't want to leave half done. When I finally left the station, it was almost 2 a.m., and that's when I made my first mistake. The gas light had been on for a while, and I figured I'd be cutting it close if I waited until morning. I didn't want to risk a breakdown out on one of the rural back roads. So I turned off onto County Road 16 and pulled into a station I'd been to plenty of times. It's open 24 hours near a strip mall with a laundromat and a donut shop. Not sketchy. Familiar. Still, the place looked off. The parking lot was unusually empty. The overhead lights above the pumps flickered like they were gasping their last breath, casting that weird yellow hue that makes shadows dance where they shouldn't. Inside the store, one sad fluorescent light glowed above the counter. No clerk visible, no cars, just silence and drizzle tapping the windshield. I should have driven off, but I didn't. I stepped out into the cold, the kind of cold that bites through your jacket and settles into your bones. As I lifted the gas nozzle, I noticed someone sitting across the lot near the dumpsters. A woman, middle-aged. She was curled up on the concrete ledge, hugging her knees to her chest. Her hoodie was soaked, thin as paper, pajama pants clinging to her legs. Her wet hair draped over her face like dark seaweed. I tried not to stare, but I looked too long. She noticed. She stood up suddenly and called out, "Excuse me." "Hey." I froze. Didn't answer. Instinct told me not to engage. But something about how she swayed, her arms wrapped tight around herself, made me hesitate. She looked like she might collapse. That hesitation, that little crack in judgment, was my second mistake. She crossed the lot, her footsteps echoing oddly in the drizzle. "Hi, I don't mean to bother you," she said quickly. I need to get to Candler, my sister's place. I've got some money, just not enough for the ride." "Seriously, thank you." We walked inside together. The clerk barely looked up from whatever he was watching on the little TV behind the counter. I went straight to the ATM. The screen was frozen, half lit, glitching out. Useless. I turned back to her. "Sorry, it's busted." She nodded slowly like she already knew. "Yeah, okay." I figured that was it. But when I stepped outside, she followed me. And before I could even unlock the door, she moved fast, slipping into the passenger seat like she belonged there. She didn't say anything at first, just buckled her seatbelt calmly. "Just take me to my sister's," she said. "She'll give you the money." I stood there, heart thudding. This wasn't right. My mouth went dry. Every part of me said, "Get her out of the car. Tell her to leave, go back inside, call someone," but I didn't. Her mood had shifted, and not in a good way. The edge in her voice, the too calm delivery, the way her hands trembled even as she tried to seem composed. It made something ancient in me recoil. "Where exactly am I taking you?" I asked, voice flat. She stared straight ahead. "Start driving. I'll tell you when to turn." I shook my head. "I need an address." She turned to me then, her expression strange, half smile, half something else. The corners of her mouth twitched like she was holding something back, or holding something in. "I'm not gonna rob you, sweetheart," she said softly. "I just need a ride." Then, quietly, too quietly, she added, "You're kind." I liked her at first. My heart was pounding hard, but I kept my voice steady. "Look," I said carefully, "I'm not a cop, but I work with the department. I'm a dispatcher. My job's asking questions." That flipped a switch in her. Her smile vanished. Her body stiffened. Then her voice jumped an octave, sharp and suspicious. "You're trying to trap me. I knew it. You're a fucking snitch." She started shifting around in her seat, restless, dragging her fingers up and down her thighs like she was brushing off insects only she could feel. Her head twitched side to side as she muttered under her breath. "You people think I'm crazy," she whispered harshly. "But I know what's going on. I know what they did." My hands tightened around the steering wheel. I had two choices: either confront her directly or diffuse the situation gently. I picked the latter. "I know there's a Walmart not far from here," I said softly. "They've got an ATM. You can warm up there, maybe grab a coffee." She stopped twitching. Her face lit up again, like someone flipped the power back on. "Okay. Yeah, that's fine. I like you. You're nicer than the others. They don't understand me." I nodded and forced a thin smile. "Let's go." The car ride was quiet at first, unnervingly so. Just the sound of the wipers and the hum of the tires. Then she started talking. Not conversation, rambling. "You know they chipped me, right?" she said. "Right behind my ear. I can hear them. They talk to me, but I ignore it. Most days." I said nothing. I just drove. "You don't know how loud it gets," she went on. "I've got people trying to kill me. 5 or 6, maybe 7. I pretend I don't know, but I do. I act dumb so they leave me alone." "Dead," she snapped. Her tone turned knife-sharp. "Don't twist my words." We were pulling into the Walmart lot when she switched moods again, like flipping a channel. She was cheerful, humming. She popped her door open before I even stopped the car and stood by the sliding doors, waiting for me. I followed her in, every instinct screaming. She stuck close. Too close. Her arm brushed mine, her eyes never leaving me. "I'm gonna hit the restroom," I said. I tried to sound casual. She nodded. "Okay, me too." She followed. Inside the women's room, the silence was deafening. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering faintly. The air smelled like bleach and cheap soap. I turned toward a stall, ready to bolt inside when she grabbed my arm. Her grip was strong, cold. She leaned in, voice low and far too intimate. "If you don't have the money, that's okay," she whispered. "But do you like getting ate out?" I ripped my arm free and darted into a stall, slamming and locking it. My hands were shaking as I fumbled for my phone. "I'm calling my coworkers," I said loud enough to carry. "They're cops. They can help you," she exploded. "Don't you fucking call the cops, bitch." Her voice was raw, feral. I stayed quiet, heart pounding against my ribs, still holding my phone, finger hovering over call. "They'll help you," I said, stalling, keeping her from acting on whatever she was thinking. "You said people were after you. They can protect you." She screamed again, spat curses, then stormed out, the door slamming behind her. I stayed put. For 5 solid minutes I didn't move. My legs were locked. My pulse thundered in my ears. I stared at the screen. 911 ready to go, thumb hovering but not pressing. Something in me waited. And then, I heard the door creak open again. She was back. I stopped breathing. A pause. Then a knock. Gentle. Fingertips against the stall. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey, I left my beer in your car. Come back with me just real quick." My voice cracked. You didn't have anything with you?" Silence. Then the door opened again, closed. I waited. 5 more minutes, maybe 10. I didn't care. I stayed there until I was sure. When I finally stepped out, the store had gone still again, like nothing had ever happened. I walked straight to customer service, found the manager, and told him everything, who I was, what happened, every detail. He didn't hesitate. Called the police. 2 officers arrived within 10 minutes. One of them was young, maybe early 30s, polite but tense. He took my statement while I trembled. The other one stood nearby watching the door. "You're lucky," the young officer said when I finished. "We've had a report matching that description. A woman attacked a man last week, gas station over on Route 14. He offered her a ride. She beat him unconscious with a tire iron. I drove home in a fog, checked the back seat at every stoplight. Every alley made my stomach twist. I've replayed that night in my head a dozen times. The lies, the way her personality shifted like broken glass under a boot, the knock on the stall door. I keep thinking, what if I'd driven her to Candler? What if I hadn't lied about the ATM? What if the bathroom had been occupied and I hadn't had a place to run? I tell myself I was lucky, and next time I won't stop. I won't engage. I won't be kind to someone I don't know. But here's what scares me the most. Deep down, some part of me still feels guilty, and that terrifies me more than anything. "Just stay at the house, I'll come over." Relief washed over me like warm water. "Really?" "Yeah, give me 20. Gotta grab the gun just in case." "The gun?" I laughed nervously. "Just saying it's cold out. I'm not getting robbed in my damn boxers." That made me laugh harder than it should have. "Fair enough. See you soon." I hung up, still smiling, though a tightness lingered under my ribs. I had about 20 minutes to kill and wasn't in a rush to sit alone in that house. So I figured I'd stop by McCoy's, grab a drink or something to snack on. Just burn time. The parking lot was mostly empty, just 2 cars. One was an old blue Chevy truck with rust bleeding down its fenders. The other, a dark sedan idling quietly near Pump 2. Its headlights were off, but the engine was running, which felt off. Still, I brushed it aside. It was late, and McCoy's was one of the only lit-up places left this far out. I parked near the front, zipped up my hoodie, and stepped out into the wind. It bit through the cotton like teeth. As I approached the entrance, I saw a guy leaning against the wall just to the right of the door, smoking. Late 30s maybe, with a scruffy face, camo jacket, and a black beanie pulled down low. He didn't say anything, didn't smile. Just held the door open and stared. There was something hollow in his eyes. Not threatening, just blank. I forced a nod. "Thanks." He didn't answer, just took a long drag from his cigarette and kept staring at the pavement. Inside, the air was warm but stale, with that mix of burned coffee and processed meat that never quite left. The flickering fluorescence buzzed overhead like a nest of angry bees, comforting in a weird way, familiar, ugly, yeah, but safe. I wandered toward the coolers in the back, grabbed a root beer and a bag of sour cream chips, just passing time, killing minutes until Eli showed. As I turned to head for the counter, I spotted another guy standing nearby. Mid-20s maybe, tall, lean build, patchy beard. Hood pulled low over his face like he didn't want to be noticed. I slowed down. Something about him made me look twice. Not fear exactly, but attention. Like when your instincts hum under your skin and you don't know why yet. He turned to look at me, and it wasn't just a glance. It was one of those slow, deliberate, but one word cut through. Bitch. It hung there, low and bitter in the stale air. At the counter, I dumped my things and pulled out a crumpled bill with shaking fingers. Pete rang me up like everything was normal, like nothing had happened. He was the same as always, heavy-set, somewhere in his 60s, greasy gray hair poking out from under a faded Vietnam vet cap. Quiet night, he said with a tired smile. I murmured, not trusting my voice for anything more. I didn't want to linger. I grabbed my change and moved toward the door, trying not to glance around too obviously. When I stepped outside, a cold gust hit me, and for a moment, I thought maybe they were gone. No voices, no footsteps behind me. The parking lot looked emptier than before. Relief surged. Maybe they left. Maybe they were just bored jerks trying to get a rise out of me. Then I saw them. The bearded guy stood next to Pump 4, hands in his pockets, eyes locked on me like a predator sizing up its next move. The man in the beanie was with him now, arms crossed, face expressionless, just watching. I swallowed hard, kept my pace steady, and walked to my car, willing myself not to show fear. Halfway there, I heard it, sharp, angry. Hey, you don't just walk away when a man talks to you. I didn't stop, didn't look back. I fumbled with the door, slid in fast, locked it, and fired up the engine. My eyes darted to the rearview mirror. They were still standing there, still watching. And then the bearded one raised his hand, slowly, and most nights. The fact that none of it might have happened if I'd just gone straight home. The gas light had come on about 15 minutes earlier, and I kept telling myself, you'll make it to morning. You don't need to stop now. But then came the gnawing thought. I had a 40-minute drive the next day, and the last thing I wanted was to deal with it half asleep, stranded on some back road. I figured 5 minutes, in and out. Just 5. It was a Tuesday night, just shy of 11. I'd just finished a shift at the diner I manage in Millbrook, Georgia. It's a small, stretched-out town that smells like pine and burnt coffee, where everything shuts down early, except the Star Mart off Highway 18. It's always open, always glowing. The cold hit me as soon as I stepped outside, the kind that wraps around your ribs and settles into your bones. February cold. I'd tossed on my oversized hoodie, the one with flour smudges and a bleach stain on the sleeve, and some old sweatpants. Wiped the pie syrup off my wrist with a napkin I found in my glove box. The kind of night where everything just feels heavier than it should. The Star Mart had always felt fine to me. It was lit up like a stadium, cameras on every corner, and usually a couple guys inside sipping burnt coffee or grabbing scratch-offs. It wasn't sketchy. I'd been there plenty of times. But something about that night felt off. I couldn't explain it, not even to myself. Just this weird prickling in my gut, like my instincts were tugging at my sleeve saying, "Not tonight. Don't." But I didn't listen. I wish I had. I'm Caleb Benson, 28. I've lived in Millbrook my whole life. It's the kind of town where people still get perms in kitchens, and where gossip outruns Wi-Fi. My life's not dramatic. I work graveyard shifts. I eat too many gas station burritos. I try to be decent. That night had been hell. Customers snapping, orders wrong. I locked the doors, headed inside, and slid a $20 across the counter to the kid behind the register. He looked half asleep, hunched over with earbuds in. "Pump 4, I said. He gave a lazy nod, didn't even make eye contact. Got it. I turned and stepped back into the cold. It hit harder this time, sharp and sudden. I pulled my hoodie tighter, hunched my shoulders, and hurried back to the car. I got in fast, locked the door again with a familiar click. That's when I noticed the minivan was gone. So was the Corolla. Only the muddy pickup remained, 2 pumps over. Didn't think much of it. I leaned back in the seat, scrolling aimlessly through my phone as the gas pumped. Something soft played on the radio. Acoustic, maybe James Taylor or something like that. I started to relax for the first time all day. My eyelids even started to droop. Then I caught movement. A man was walking around the front of my car, not heading toward the truck, not going inside the store, just looping, meandering, almost like he was bored or pretending to be. He wore a dark brown hoodie pulled up tight, and a beanie was shoved underneath. His jeans looked too big, frayed at the bottom where they dragged against the ground. I glanced up, just a flicker, a reflex, and met his eyes. Damn it. We locked for half a second. That was enough. He stopped right in front of my car. There's a specific kind of unease that settles into your gut when someone stares at you like they're sizing you up, like they're flipping a coin in their mind. Friend or threat, risk or target. He lifted a hand slowly and motioned for me to roll the window down, and everything inside me screamed, "Don't." I didn't roll it all the way down, just cracked the window an inch, enough to hear him, not enough for him to reach inside. "You got any change for gas?" he asked. His voice had this weird brightness to it, almost chipper, but his eyes didn't match. They were darting, restless, unfocused. Something about him felt off, like his face was trying to act one way while the rest of him told a different story. I shook my head. "No, sorry." He nodded slowly. "Okay, that's cool." Then he paused. 1 beat. 2. "Hey," he said, smiling like we were old friends. "You want me to get that pump for you when it's done?" I blinked, caught off guard. "No, I'm good, thanks." He didn't move, just stood there, shifting from foot to foot, hands buried deep in the pouch of his hoodie. There was this awkward pause that felt way too long. Then he grinned. Wide, too wide. His teeth were yellowed, crooked in a way that made my skin itch. "Just being helpful, you know," he added, still smiling. I gave a tight, polite smile. "I'm okay." That seemed to deflate him a little. His grin faltered. Without another word, he turned and started walking, slowly, around the side of my car, behind it, and then out of view. I froze. My tank was still filling. I could hear the pump clicking behind me in steady bursts, but I couldn't move. I didn't want to open the door. I didn't want to reach for the gas nozzle. I just sat, tense, eyes scanning my mirrors, trying to figure out where he went. I checked the side mirror. Nothing. Rear view. Still nothing. He'd vanished somewhere behind his truck. The unease that had been quietly building was now a full-body grip. I didn't want to whip my head around. I didn't want to look panicked, but I was panicked. Every part of me was screaming that something wasn't right, that I needed to get out of there, but I couldn't make or high, or lonely. But the way he lingered, the way he smiled, the way he waited, none of that was random. The next day, I took a different route to work and stopped at a gas station 10 miles out of my way. I bought pepper spray and clipped it to my keys. I haven't gotten gas after dark since. Not every scary story ends in a headline. Sometimes the ones that shake you most are the ones that almost went wrong. The kind that could have tipped the other way with a smile, a wrong answer, a second too slow. So if you're reading this, trust your instincts, don't wait, and keep your tank full. You never know who's watching at the next pump.